Hello, beautiful. My name is Ariana. It is so good to have you here. Thank you for tuning in. Today's topic is about archetypes, and we're going to riff a little bit about the questions that I've been asked recently about archetypes and how we can use this incredibly powerful knowledge to support us as we move our way through the world. So to begin with, I'm going to go through my list of questions one by one. And if you have any questions that come up for you as we go through this information, just pop it in the comments below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So first of all, the first question was, have you always believed in these philosophies, or did this only come to you later in life? There's an aspect of archetypal profiling that I've always subscribed to, but I didn't really know that it had a name. I didn't know that it was a thing, you know? So I had these ideas about energies and patterns of behavior. In fact, when I started my mentoring practice, that was my little superpower, was being able to detect and see into the other for their patterns and behaviors, and being able to call them out on that to help them step into the light side of their journey. And what do I mean by that is, when we work with the shadow aspect of an archetypal profile, what we are doing in the shadow is we are stripping ourselves of our power. And so if you choose to play in the light of an archetypal profile, you will find that you are actually claiming fragmented pieces of yourself and your energy, and in so doing, standing really strong in your own sense of power, ego, empowerment, you know? So I knew that this was something that I was very interested in because I was living it in my life and I saw it very clearly in my clients. And I had read a couple of books about it, and everything just fell into place a few years ago when I decided to really start honing in on the psychology aspect of archetypal profiling. And so I suppose there's a part of me that's always been interested in it. And as I've grown up and grown older, I've been able to put names to the theories that I wholeheartedly believe in. The second question is all about your archetypal profile. And the question is, you speak about there being 12 archetypes, but aren't there in fact 80? Yeah, okay. So there are so many different archetypes that you can call into your life and play in their energetic expression. Archetypes is not a new concept. There are different words used for the word archetype: template, model, pattern, behavior. The list goes on. Carl Jung had created a system of what we call Jungian archetypes, and they are 12 archetypal patterns. As the years have gone by since his work, there have been many other people who have created and added to that list. I follow the work of Caroline Myss, and I am busy studying with her in her Sacred Contracts course. And I love the way that she has brought in a lot more freedom and diversity and the feminine aspect of understanding archetypes and patterns. And so in her work, there are 80 archetypes, and the list is continuously growing because, as she mentions, as time moves on and as the years go by, life on Earth changes, and therefore the patterns and behaviors of human beings change too. And so the idea is that as time progresses, so will the addition of new archetypal profiles. And so, yes, to both of those questions, there are 80 archetypes currently that I'm studying about. But when we do an archetypal natal chart, which is something that I offer as a service, we chart 12 archetypal patterns that exist in your life and that live with you throughout your days, your life. And what happens is that throughout your life, you move in and out of these archetypal patterns, and you call on them when you are in certain situations and certain circumstances. Now, there are 12 astrological houses in a natal chart, and so each one of your archetypes will be placed in a house, in an astrological house. It's really interesting to work with your archetypes in this way, because as you follow your astrological houses, as you chart the course from house number 1 to 12, you work your way through the certain stages of your life. So you work through the I, the ego, how I show up, how I am seen. You work through what it is that you value on this earth, what it is that you hold in high stead. Then you work your way through the we and the communication channels that you will most likely use when you are, communicating effectively. That alone in that quadrant, if you had to examine the archetypes that are alone in that quadrant, you will learn more about yourself, more about the values that you uphold and that are dear to you, and more about the way that you can communicate in an effective and for a desirable outcome by simply understanding the archetypes that live in those houses and then learning how to play in their light as opposed to their shadow. And so as we chart your archetypes around in your houses, you get a very clear understanding of which energies, which are archetypes, which energies you can call on to help you grow in each of those houses. It's really important to remember that there are 4 survival archetypes that we all possess. Every single person on this planet possesses 4 survival archetypes. They are called the victim, the prostitute, the saboteur, and the child. And these 4 archetypal patterns are very much connected to 4 elements that we need to learn as survival strategies to help us claim our power back. The victim is the archetype that teaches us about boundaries, setting boundaries, upholding boundaries, honoring our boundaries, Then the prostitute is the archetypal pattern that teaches us about security on this planet and helps us claim our power back from that which we hand over to external forces because we think that that's going to give us security. And so as we start to play with these archetypes, we will be faced with challenging situations and consciously need to choose whether or not we are negotiating our power for safety and security, whether we are negotiating our boundaries for whatever we think is more important at that time. The saboteur is all about our personal power. What do we sabotage in our lives because we're afraid of our own power? It's a big one. And then the child archetype is about personal responsibility. How many times do you run away from challenging situations because you don't want to take personal responsibility for your life? The minute you grow up, The minute you take that personal responsibility, you are calling your power back to you. And so if you only look at the 4 survival archetypes, you will see very clearly how owning those aspects of survival will naturally help you step into your power, will naturally help you empower yourself so that you can be the best version of yourself, the most empowered version of yourself. And so because every single person has these 4 archetypal profiles, I talk about them a lot, I focus on them a lot, because all the other archetypes, so you will have another 8 as your natal chart, they all will somehow, in some way, shape or form, play and dance with these 4 archetypal patterns, with the 4 survival archetypes. And you will find them playing around with one another in certain circumstances in your life, even when you are in a house that is governed by another archetypal pattern, right? So I hope that that clears up that question. The third question is that you talk about archetypes and energies interchangeably. What's the go? I have a take on archetypes that I haven't heard anyone speak about before. And so I consider archetypes to be energetic allies from another realm. And they play in our psyche to help us become empowered beings. So before you come down to this earth, you set forth a soul agreement. And in order for you to achieve or learn all of the things that you have set out to do in this lifetime, you have called upon other souls to facilitate the learnings and the teachings and the lessons. And you also call upon energies and allies, energetic allies. Now, this is not the first time, this may not be the first time you've ever heard about an energetic ally. I know a lot of people talk about allies, but I actually see archetypes and energetic allies as being one and the same thing. So I am a little soul and I haven't come down to earth yet, and I'm like, you know, I say to the powers that be that I need to learn X, Y, and Z. And so I'm going to call upon another soul to help me learn X, and then some other couple of souls to learn Y, and maybe a few tens to learn lesson Z. And then in order to move through those challenges and lessons along with all these souls, I need to develop certain personality traits, behaviors, and patterns that will help me steer my life into the direction of these lessons. And this is where the archetypes will come in. So I'll give you an example from my own chart. I have the Liberator in my first house. The Liberator is an archetypal profile and or energetic ally that is all about liberating myself and therefore others in so doing from limiting beliefs, thoughts, cultural norms, familial patterns, fill in the blank. I liberate myself, and in so doing, lead by example so that others can follow. It is in my first house, which means it is about me, how I see myself, how others see me, and how I present to the world. Now, I didn't choose consciously to be the liberator. I just am. I can't keep my mouth shut if people play small. I have a tendency to have foot in mouth syndrome because I don't buy into stories of smallness and dogmatic behaviors and patterns and norms. And so because I have that underlying current within my being, I don't subscribe to anything that doesn't sit right with me. And so therefore I liberate myself from that. And in so doing, because I do it in a way that is deeply aligned with my passion and my purpose, because I follow my intuitive nudges and I can hear the callings of my Liberator Energy, others are quite drawn to that. Not because I'm trying to get them to be interested, but because they just are. And they're not interested in me as a person, but they're interested in what the Liberator Energy has to, what the Liberator Energy represents, right? So the energy that I call upon when I'm in the mode of me, myself, my ego, how I present to the world, how others see me, is the Liberator Energy. And I know that now. So what that does for me is it teaches me how to play in the light of that archetype, meaning I'm doing me. I'm gonna do me the best I know how. I'm gonna make my own choices. I'm gonna liberate my own energy. I'm gonna be really, really conscious and focused on the way that I wanna live my life and very discerning about the choices that I make, right? And I'm not gonna play in the shadow of that archetype, which is tyranny, making others believe what I believe. Making them feel like they don't have a choice and that I am the goddess of their life, right? And so there was a time in my life where before I knew about archetypes and archetypal patterns, the Liberator Energy was always there. I always played around with this idea and this notion of not being stuck in a way that I didn't subscribe to. But I, unbeknownst to me, was playing a lot in the shadow where I was very dictatorial. I was very much, I was very strong in my ways to the point that if people didn't agree with me, I would have a problem with that. And there are still times in my life now where sometimes I just don't understand someone else's thinking, and there's a part of me that wants to hammer it into them. And in those moments, I get to choose again and realize that I am not the authority in their life. I'm the authority in my life, and I get to make my own choices, and I need to let them have their own experience and make their own choices. And so by looking at this really consciously and understanding how knowing the Liberator Energy can play out in its light or its shadow, this in itself has allowed me to grow and to step into a quote-unquote better version of myself so that I'm not constantly pushing people away and then becoming the one thing that I'm trying to escape. Do you know what I mean? So I see archetypes and energies as the same thing. It's a pattern, a behavior, an energetic frequency, a vibration, an ally that I call into my life to help me achieve liberation, to help me get closer to my center. And I will always use those two terms interchangeably. So I hope that answers that question. The next question was, what do you mean when you talk about light and shadow, particularly the shadow? Let me just have a sip of this. So, the light is the conscious, the shadow is the unconscious. The whole point of this work is to understand or to acknowledge, to see, to witness the unconscious behaviors and tendencies so that we can choose again and integrate that into the light. And so We have a conscious mind where we consciously make decisions, and then we have an unconscious mind that we mostly make decisions from. So a lot of the times we make decisions without even realizing that they're coming from our unconscious mind, because we've been programmed to believe a certain thing, or we have a certain pattern of behavior that is ingrained so deep within us that we don't even know that it exists. We don't even understand that we're working from that program and that unconscious pattern of behavior. But regardless of whether we know that it exists, whether we have seen it, witnessed it, felt it, smelt it, sensed it, it's there. And the whole point of this work is to witness that unconscious behavior and pattern, so that by simply placing our attention or awareness onto it, it changes. And in that moment, we have a choice as to whether or not we want to work from that program. And it's a really powerful thing, because this is all about choice. It's about It's about us consciously choosing our lives rather than habitually living out a pattern of behavior that we have been taught or that we have picked up in our childhood. And so when I talk about the light and the shadow, it's simply the conscious and the unconscious. And I talk about how we can shine a light onto the shadow aspects of self and integrate them into the light by simply shining the light on them. And shadow work is nothing to be afraid of. It's not some deep, dark, mysterious, crazy, cult-like addiction. It is simply the shining light on the parts of ourselves that we don't even know exist. It's about honoring the parts of us that are programmed deep within us, that have us habitually live our lives, and sometimes harmfully living our lives, whether that's harmful to ourselves or to others. And so with this work comes a big responsibility, because once you shine a light on your shadow, you have the choice to change it. And once you know, you can't unknow. And so it becomes radical responsibility for yourself and how you see your life and how you see yourself, and consistently choosing again. Because if you have been acting from a program that has been living in your life for 40 years, then I can tell you the choosing again doesn't only happen once. Sometimes it can, but you're going to have to choose again and again and again and again, because 40 years of programming may take a little while to unravel, and that's okay. That's okay. It will take a while, and you can almost expect that it will. But once you have unraveled it, and once you have allowed your unconscious to become your conscious, you just celebrated a little win in your own liberation. Yeah? Gosh, this is going much longer, so I might do one more question and then do another live at some other stage. So, do archetypes tell you about the person you are? Yes? You already are the person you are. They're not going to change anything. They're just going to help you see yourself and help you step into your own sense of power. So until I knew that I had Liberator Energy, I still acted like the Liberator, but I wasn't as self-assured and strong in my ways and my approach, because once I learned about the Liberator Energy and what it stood for and what it stands for and how I can call on it and what it represents, then I had something to work with, something to aspire to, something to be inspired by. And by learning more about that liberator energy, I was able to call it in and then live that way. So it's very much about intentional living and intentional being the priority here. Intentionally choosing what I want and then intentionally rejecting that which I don't, right? The shadow. And question number 6, I think. How do you know what you're meant to accomplish in this lifetime? Well, when you do an archetypal profile, you chart, like I mentioned, your 12 archetypes in your natal chart. And the 12 houses talk about parts of your life that relate to, I've talked about the first quadrant, your home, your creativity and the way you have fun, your rituals and the way you take care of yourself, your relationships, your spirituality, your highest powers and the highest potential that you can become, your career, your job, your vocation. And so by understanding all of these archetypal profiles and how they sit in your chart, you can work with those energies to step into that which is there for you in that house. So another example from my own chart is that I have the healer archetype in my 6th house. Your 6th house is about your ability to create ritual, your self-care practices, your health, your well-being. And if I look at the way I live my life, it really imbues the healer archetype. I am constantly using this archetype in my own health and well-being practices, constantly stepping into healing rituals to support my energetic expression, constantly leaning on healing rituals to create a really healthy lifestyle for myself and my family. And so, and knowing this, I don't know about the word accomplish, because that sets the scene for me to like almost be striving for or chasing something that's quote unquote perfect. So I'm not quite sure about that word, but it helps me move in the direction of what that archetypal pattern has set out for me in that house. It helps me move towards the expression of what that archetype naturally has guided me to be. So I hope that answers that question for you. I have another 2 questions, but I think that this live has gone a little bit too long. So what I'm going to do is set another time for us at some stage next week and continue with the other 2 questions. The 2 questions, because I don't want to do the questions a disservice by answering them quickly. So the first one is, what is the deeper meaning of life? It's a pretty big question. And the second question that I'll answer in the next live is who we are defined by our purpose in life? Yeah, I need to unpack that a little bit. So please ask your questions below to the questions that I've just answered. Too many words in that statement, but you get what I'm saying. And I really hope that this has helped clear up any sorts of confusion about archetypes. If you're looking to get an archetypal profiling done, please click the link in my bio. I offer these sessions. They come in packs of 2, which means that the first session we actually chart your natal chart, and the second session we talk about your natal chart. So it's a 3-hour session all together, 1.5 hours each. You will receive a report and all of the things that will help you integrate your archetypes into your life. And also, just on another note, I am going to be launching a mentorship that is going to be talking about all energies, your energetic blueprint, the lessons of truth that are found in each of your energy centers, and also going into archetypes and archetypal profiling as part of this mentorship. It is a full year mentorship, and so we're not going to be rushing through the content. We're going to be playing around with the energetic expressions of each one of your chakras and your energy centers. And we're also going to be leaning into the archetypal patterns that may or may not exist in your life, so that you can truly understand your own power, so that you can claim your power and live your life from that place. So it's a mentorship of empowerment and of consciously choosing your life, so that you are unstuck and fulfilled in a life of purpose and pleasure. Thanks so much for joining me and sticking with me until the end. Let me know if you've got any further questions. Bye for now.